And somebody's going to say, that's stupid. I'm mad that one of these teams is going to lose.
Yeah.
And can they both win? Dan Orlovsky, Hawk, J-Mac is here. Dan, say what you want to say.
Sports. My mom used to always tell me that, hey, somebody has to lose the game.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, a lot of times it wasn't my team. So.
Hey, tell him. All right, let's get Adam in here. Adam Schefter joining us throughout the show. And Adam, he's behind us. Zay Flowers missed last week with the knee injury. What can you tell us about his status?
Laura, he didn't practice today, which is not an encouraging way to start the practice week for the Baltimore Ravens ahead of their matchup against the Buffalo Bills on Sunday night. They were hoping that he would be able to play, and maybe he still will return in practice later this week in time to get back out there on Sunday night. I think that Baltimore felt like there was a realistic chance that they would be able to get back Zay Flowers, but the week has not started out on an encouraging note with Zay Flowers not practicing at all today, Laura.
Golly, yeah, you hate to hear that if you're a Ravens fan and if you're Lamar Jackson for that matter. How much, Dan, does Zay Flowers change this matchup, even just his presence alone?
I think it's a big deal. If you watched Buffalo's defense over the last couple of years, you would say they're going to play cover two like every snap. But the thing is, they've started to change that a little bit. I'd say that they've started to play over the last couple of weeks a little bit more man coverage. They've been more willing to do it. I think it's allowed them to have better run fits in certain situations. I think they've been a little bit more hands-on at the line of scrimmage to create a little bit of takeaway issue for them. I think that's the big thing is for a defense that has, and Lamar, when he played against them, consistently been in that zone coverage. As you see it, 30% in the first 15 weeks has jumped up to 40% man coverage. And I think part of it is Christian Benford having a ton of comfort with Rasul Douglas doing it. So if Zay Flowers doesn't play and he's their man winner, I think Buffalo's even more willing to play some man coverage, try to make sure that they can shut down Bateman, and that's huge advantage for Buffalo's defense.
Sorry.
Yeah, so when I'm looking at the Ravens offense, and I went back to that game where obviously they beat down on this defense.
Yeah.
A lot of things have changed. One thing that hasn't changed is they have Mark Andrews, Pat Ricard, and Isaiah Likely. So if you're going to play those small guys to those big packages, like these are basically extensions of the offensive line. Here you're going to see Lamar run, read option here. You're going to have Andrews out in front. You're going to have Likely out in front. Boom. This is a walk-in touchdown from the 10-yard line. Next is going to be another big Derrick Henry run. Right here you're going to have Mark Andrews in the line of scrimmage. He's going to lead the way with the kick out. And then Pat Ricard is going to clean up over the middle and lead Derrick Henry through the hole. Watch how big this hole gets. Pat Ricard eats up two players. And DeMar Hamlin is going to have to take better angles and be a willing tackler in this game because in that first matchup, he was not. Lastly, we all remember the opening big run from Derrick Henry. You got Mark Andrews and Pat Ricard. Watch Ricard come down the interior defensive line. Wham block. Boom. And then Andrews sealing inside on wrap creates that huge lane for this long touchdown run. So they played physical ball. They went into that game knowing that they were the more dominant team, and the Bills did not have an answer for it the first time around.
See, I love that tape because it displays the massive issue for Buffalo, which is they like to play light.
Yes.
There's no way. They're too well coached. There's no way you could go into this game and say, we're going to do what we do, and they got to kind of handle us because if they put those big bodies on the field, you're just not going to be able to contend. You might be able to do it for the first drive, 2, 3, but over 4 quarters, you're just going to get ran through.
And I think I heard you say this the other day, it's Jimmys and Joes, not X's and O's. So when you look at that tape and you're looking at the Buffalo Bills defense, they don't have a lot of their guys out there. And at that second level in that game, that first one against Baltimore, there's no Matt Milano. There's no Terrell Bernard. There's no Taron Johnson. Those are their guys. When you're talking about stopping the run and creating and disrupting some things, we're going to see right here. You mentioned playing more man. They played a lot of man-to-man with 2 safeties out high. And when you're rushing the quarterback, there's a 3-man rush, and Matt Milano is the spy. It's his responsibility to get Bo Nix if he scrambles. This is Taron Johnson. You're talking about the run game. He's playing nickel. Watch how fast he triggers and gets in the run game right here and makes a tackle for a loss. This is the guy for them that steps up and plays like a linebacker. The next thing for that Ravens offense is they like to play in space. You're talking about a guy like Zay Flowers, whether he's out there or not, or screens to Justice Hill. Terrell Bernard, a guy that is instinctive and can get out there and make plays. So when you go back to that first game, you're right. They ran all over them. But when I look at who was out there for them, they didn't have the main guys at that second level, not only to make plays, but also the communication that transpires between the front line and that defense and the secondary behind them.
I don't want to put you on the spot. So if Buffalo says we have to play bigger, does that mean, because Taron Johnson comes off the field?
They're not going to take Taron Johnson off the field.
But then I don't think they can win the football game then.
He's one of their best defensive players.
That's my point, though.
You can't take him off the field. You've been stopping the run for the past however many years that Taron Johnson has been a nickel, and they've ran the same
but not
personnel.
This run.
For sure.
This run
but I don't think they're going to take him off the field. I don't think that's the
It's not a knock on Taron Johnson. It's just a sign.
He's 120 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
One thing, at least Matt Milano's back out there. The Bills have allowed the 8th fewest yards per rush in the NFL since Milano made that debut in Week 13. They didn't have him this season until Week 13. All right, that game's fascinating. Let's get Adam back in here for some more top stories. We're going to start with the latest, Adam, on the Cowboys head coaching search.
Well, they are not rushing into anything right now, Laura. They're taking their time as everybody waits to see if and when talks heat up with Deion Sanders. Again, Jerry Jones and Deion spoke this past week. Deion said he's intrigued by what Jerry Jones had to say. And that's the interesting part of this, but there's no interview scheduled. Talks will continue. We'll see where it goes. Dallas obviously just starting out in its coaching search. And meanwhile, the Cowboys' former head coach was in Chicago today at the Bears training facility. Love the idea of that. The former Packers and Cowboys head coach in the Bears building, meeting with Bears officials to discuss that job. And clearly, Mike McCarthy has respect amongst players across the league. The Bears know the type of job he could do with their quarterback, Caleb Williams, and that's why they've spent today going over. But take a look at all the candidates that the Bears have either completed interviews with or requested interviews with. That is a wide swath of candidates out there, and we'll see if and when the Bears narrow that list down. But Mike McCarthy, obviously the latest candidate, and won't be the last one to interview for that Chicago Bears head coaching job.
A lot of people on that list, Adam. Caleb Williams told the St. Brown podcast what he's looking for in his next head coach.
I want an offensive-minded guy so I can build with him and be with that coach for the next 19, 17, 15 years. So I can also learn and grow and, things like that. But if we get an overall grand scheme coach and is good with time management, good with the clock, good with helping control the game, just because it's a big factor, obviously. When we played our first time at Charles Place, big factor is being able to help control the clock, helping find the right guys to win championships. I mean, that's the only goal that I have for my NFL career is to go win a championship, and championships start with one.
All right, so there was a lot there, J-Mac. You heard
Yes,
what
there
Caleb...
was.
Maybe some shots fired, I don't know. Either way, you heard what he's saying that he wants. Is McCarthy the right guy for the Bears?
I mean, I look at all the names on that list. I'm wondering why the heck Dan Orlovsky's name not on that. He needs an offensive-minded guy.
Yep.
Time management. Dan, you got time management.
I was thinking the same
You're here
thing
on time
about
every week.
myself.
I got to get up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
So you got. I look at Mike McCarthy, and sure, I think there's a piece of this where he's been around quarterbacks, he's developed them, he's been a head coach before. But it's like at the same time, I look at all those names on that list, and for the whole season, we've talked about Mike McCarthy in this offense. It's simple. He doesn't do enough to give his offensive guys, his quarterback, an advantage within the system. So we're going to say all of those things. Then how do we feel as though Mike McCarthy is the best option for Caleb Williams to move him forward? That's my question of all of these candidates that we're looking at. We don't see anyone that could possibly say, hey, Caleb gets this guy. We can think that he can take him to the next level.
I think it's the best option I have for weeks, and I think it checks off all the three boxes, or the three most important boxes. Number one, walk into the locker room, you immediately have a winner. The expectation is to now win. I don't have to figure out or hope or cross my fingers that he can win. He's done it everywhere he's gone. Number two, every quarterback that he's had develops to a higher level under him. He did it with Aaron Rodgers. And what was Aaron Rodgers when he was young? Super talented, wildly creative, needed to play on time a little bit.
Very Caleb Williams.
But he didn't take away that beauty of the game away, right? Matt Flynn played under Mike McCarthy, lit it up. Dak Prescott went to a new level. And I know Dak Prescott wasn't, quote unquote, like young when he went there, but he was on still the heart of his career. I think the third thing is this. Caleb, where's the number one place he's got to grow? Caleb, what's the play? What's the defense? What does that mean to me? Caleb last year still played with a question mark way too often. Mike McCarthy will make it an exclamation point. We're calling this play, you're throwing the ball here versus this coverage. If it gets covered, then go make a play.
Yeah.
That's the difference. That's why I love him there.
I have a quick question. So you wouldn't have McCarthy calling plays, though, would you? Or would you?
I don't mind Mike McCarthy calling plays. I think Mike McCarthy's a good offensive feel scheme or game caller of the game when it comes to feel. I do think that they need somebody in the offensive coordinator role that has a little bit of a touch to the modern day football.
Yes.
Thomas Brown that has.
I've heard you say that all
new age concepts that are easier for quarterbacks.
The reason why I don't mind Mike McCarthy is all the reasons why you mentioned. Because the simplicity of the West Coast that he runs with in today's day and age that feels a little bit old
school. Which is based on what, pass game wise?
Timing.
Bang.
It's based on repetition.
Bang.
It's based on being strategic and when you take your shots. These are all things that would benefit Caleb, right? So I'm not going to rehash everything you said. Aaron Rodgers I have down is a great comp for him as a young quarterback who needs to learn to be on rhythm. Part two of this is, and this might be my bias as a wide receiver, I'm sure J-Mac will feel this as well, there are 52 other players in that locker room.
Yeah.
And we can't be hiring a head coach solely on what the quarterback needs. Does he need to develop? Absolutely. But there are other men that you need to make sure are on the same page and can push forward. And as somebody who's been a winner everywhere he's gone, and with that head coaching experience, it feels like a slam dunk.
Can we lose the narrative that we often say, well, the young quarterback, you got to give him an offensive mind. Look what happened with Josh Allen when he went with Sean McDermott. Lamar Jackson when he went with Harbaugh. C.J. Stroud when we went to Miko Ryans. Dan Quinn and Jane Daniels. I can only think of 3 examples where the team hired a coach that was strictly for the young quarterback and it worked out well. I think it was Sean McVay with Jared Goff. It was Zach Taylor with Joe Burrow. And who was the third one? I'm trying to think of it. There's not a lot of examples of it working out ideally for, hey, we got to get the young quarterback to play well. Let's hire the head coach on that regard.
It'll be interesting to see this hiring cycle when it all gets finished, because I do think you're hearing more of a rumbling toward get somebody who can be a great leader, who can manage an entire team, instead of the phase that we were in for a longer time, which was pair these offensive minds with the quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
We'll see. All right, we got a lot more to get to on the show. And coming around the league, Patrick Mahomes talked about what he expects from Travis Kelce in the playoffs today. Listen to this.
What does playoff football mean to Travis?
You know, I think it's just the greats, man. They step up in the playoffs, and it's just higher intensity, and the best players and the best leaders step up and make the best plays, and he's done that, and so I expect the same from him going into this playoffs. And I think his mentality that he steps on the football field with at practice and on game day is kind of resonates with the entire team and gets everybody to play their best football, and that's what it takes in order to win championships.
Hawk, you expect to see more from Travis Kelce in the playoffs?
I do. It's the playoffs, and I expect him to up his game a little bit. But on top of that, gone are the days where he is the only option that defenses can key on. With Hollywood Brown in the lineup, it's right-sized their receiving corps, so now you have to deal with Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, and Xavier Worthy, which forces them to play Travis Kelce a little more straight up. Yeah, he's a little older in age, but if you give him one-on-one coverage, especially in the playoff against the safety, he's going to ball.
In Detroit, Dan Campbell is excited to get David Montgomery back from what was initially feared to be a season-ending knee injury. Here's what he said about his running back this week.
It'll mean a lot. Five's a big part of us. He's a huge part of us, and to me, he's a bell cow. He's somebody that he's a tone setter. He's a catalyst. So there's a place for him. There's a place for him here. So there'll be a place for him in this game. So it's going to be good to get him back.
I bet. Dan, how does Montgomery impact the Lions' offense?
He's the tone setter, like Dan Campbell said. I think this is enormous for Detroit. Yes, Jahmyr Gibbs has to get his touches. We've seen how dynamic he is. But Dan Campbell saying, this guy is one of the faces of our football team. This is a run-first offense. This is an offense that likes to wear on you play-by-play, drive-by-drive throughout a football game. And so the ability to make sure Gibbs get his touches, but David Montgomery physically impacting that game is an enormous thing. And remember, this is a fourth down offense that loves to run the ball in those situations, as well as third and goal, long distance. Having his physicality back there is a big deal.
To Dallas, where Micah Parsons spoke about Mike McCarthy's departure and what's next for the Cowboys.
And it's very, very interesting, man. Obviously very sad because the relationships, we had with Coach McCarthy and everything he's done for our program. 3 straight 12-5 seasons, playoff appearances, and obviously an unfortunate year due to injuries and things like that. But it is devastating. And, he's always been good to us as a unit, us to coaches, players. It's going to be very interesting, due to the free agents, the coaching. It's like, it's going to be a complete reset.
J-Mac, what needs to change for the Cowboys on defense?
A complete reset, just like Michael Parsons just said. When you rank in the bottom 5 of all rushing statistics, along with just points allowed, you have to figure out some things. And to me, defensively, they have to figure out what's their identity. To start a game, you have to be strong up front, the middle of their defense. Who's the bell cow that's setting the tone and setting the tempo for them? You have a pass rush on the outside. You have a corner in the secondary. You need those guys in the front, especially at that middle linebacker spot with Kendricks being a free agent, to come in and build that identity.
I cannot wait to see who they end up going with as head coach, but everything else in and around that, too, is really important. All right, still ahead on the show, Dan, Hawk, J-Mac, they're talking about C.J. Stroud and that Texans pass game. They dominated the Chargers defense. Why they could do the same against the Chiefs. You don't want to miss it. That game on ESPN and ABC on Saturday, and we'll tell you all about it next on NFL.
See a lot. This is diabolical at home, okay? You can accelerate like I can. Let's have some fun, okay?
Okay, boys, let's do that every week.
You think the Texans got a chance versus Kansas City?
I do.
I agree. One of the reasons why is because Nico Collins and in-breaking routes between him and C.J. Stroud. Now, this is a staple point of Houston's offense. Bobby Slowick, their offensive coordinator, comes from Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, and a big part of what they love to do is throw these in-breaking routes where they try to vacate the middle of the field. Sometimes it's with play action. Sometimes it's with drop back. I think Nico Collins' comfort, his frame, his route running ability is a major part of why they're successful doing it. Now, one time they'll do it what we call the dagger concept. Yeah. Another time is what we call sometimes a wrap or dig route by the one-on-one concepts or route tree. Okay, so number one, what they do differently in Houston in comparison to some other teams is they really try to live in the shotgun play action world where CJ's going to sit in that shotgun, and what they can do is they'll take their backside tight end and make sure the protection is one way and the back's another way, and they get to those stacks at the bottom of the screen with him and Robert Woods. Now, 2 things for me that stand out.
Before you even get there, the protection part of it, when you talk about that shotgun play action, look what it does to the defensive line. Now these guys start to slow down. You see if Schultz is coming back as a running back. Bud Dupree is trying to figure out and determine the play on the run, so it slows down that rush, and those guys are checking to make sure the protection's there before they get out in the route.
Because they'll run it well enough out of the gun.
Yes.
Now, out of this set, right, I love the fact that versus what they anticipate zone defenses, they put Robert Woods, kind of their speedster at the point, and then Nico Collins is behind him. I think the main reason is we want to make sure that Nico gets off the line of scrimmage free. The second thing is I want Nico to be behind Robert Woods. I want him to be 4 or 5 yards behind him because my number one issue with Robert Woods is I want Robert to do what we call the clear out route. You're going vertical, and I want you to lift coverage. Remember, the play action, I have to draw coverage down. Robert lift it, and see how Nico's behind him?
It's a hell of a clear out route, ain't it?
That's a clear out. Let's go. Can we go back to the beginning real quick, Dan? I am a connoisseur of the clear out route in my career. So this is actually the most important part of this play.
Yes.
If it's single high, he has to make sure he influences a single high safety. But Robert Woods knows that there's probably a backside safety, so he's going to shoot right through the middle. To your point about this is a spacing route. So not only are they in stacked alignment to make sure that he's going to be out in front, you're going to watch Nico widen. You have to widen a dagger route from a stack because you have to have the right spacing. He's going to clear it out. If he stays on a straight path right behind him, he's going to miss the window. So you see he's going to widen out, cut back inside the DB, and still widen to the numbers because this is the area he's trying to occupy.
I love the spacing distribution there, not only vertically but also horizontally. And then right now as a quarterback, you see this middle of the field and you go, that's exactly what I'm looking for. This is one of those layered or feathered throws that go right over those underneath defenders perfectly to Nico Collins. He's got a great understanding of when he gets to the top of that cut, that's when I want to take advantage of it. So if the Kansas City Chiefs are going to play a little bit of a single high safety or a zone concept, that's how they're going to attack it in that gun play action. The second thing, bottom of the screen. Now, this is different, right? This time, Nico Collins is at the point and Mechie's off. They're anticipating, once again, some man coverage. Last time, zone. This is another version of some of these in-breaking concepts. I love how Nico, now Hawk, let me ask you this. Nico, last time you said he went outside. This time it looks like he's going inside. The Chargers playing outside leverage, man coverage with one safety middle of the field. Why the inside seam?
Because he's already wide. So in the previous one, he was a little bit outside the hash, which means he had to widen to the numbers. Well, we're going to line you up already inside numbers. So if you go inside because you're scared if you go outside, you'll get stuck. You need to be pushed, and your timing is going to change from when you go to the middle.
Let me ask you this, because you're playing man coverage, right? And I know you're playing your leverage as a DB because you're playing outside of Nico, understanding that you have help.
Yes.
But at some point, you got to know as well, we only want inbreakers in Houston.
Yes, and the challenge for this is why Bobby Sloak is doing it. Both times we've seen this in cut, even on the other one, it still has to be caught 2 yards outside these hash marks. But you get into these tight splits because it makes it tough on the DB. I will never tell a cornerback with a split this tight to play inside leverage because you have all of this yards on the outside. Yes, you're saying we like to run inside breakers. If he aligns inside Nico Collins and he just takes off, you know quarterbacks at this level, if you give them from the numbers all the way to the sideline to fit a ball in there, I didn't say flawless, you're going to make that catch. So he has to say outside leverage. But what he mistakes is Nico Collins is a big physical receiver. You can't get on his body. Now when you do that and you get on him, you create the surface for him to be able to use that arm to push off, and the official's never going to
I love the way he plays through contact here at the top right now, that separation with the chicken wing.
It's what makes the entire play. So this depth of this route is typically about 15 to 17 yards. Unless you get contact from a timing purposes, you need to break it out earlier. The other thing is, as he pushes to the inside, to your point about when he goes inside, they missed this first window, and they hit a second window for that exact reason because he has contact and has to go now.
Stroud throwing with somebody right in his face. You should like that.
If it's man coverage, who do you like for Kansas City to match up with him more often than not?
As much as they can get McDuffie, their best cornerback,
you think
on
he's
Nico Collins.
Enough for
he's
Nico?
not as big as him, but he's their best cover guy. What was going to really help Kansas City, Jalen Watson should be back in the lineup.
If Kansas City's going to win the game, they're going to have to shut down those inbreakers from C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins. Good job, boys.
I love it, guys. I did want to point one thing out. The Texans are 0-4 all-time in playoff games with below freezing temperatures. The high temp on Saturday is 26. I talked to Derek Stingley Jr. yesterday in preparation for this game. He told me, whatever, it's cold. We'll just deal with it. All right, time for some top stories. Let's get Adam Schefter in here. And Hawk's elbow and his back and his head.
You're pulling that Mina.
It got her a lot of virality. I want some of that.
I'm mad that Adam missed it because he would have enjoyed it. But anyway, Adam, let's stay on the Chiefs-Texans game if you're with me. I think he is. Some good news for the Chiefs. Go ahead.
Well, all the players that missed the game against the Broncos, Patrick Mahomes and Isaiah Pacheco and Chris Jones and DJ Humphries, all were listed as full go in practice this week for the Chiefs. I think the Bengals wish that those players were full go a couple of weeks back, but nevertheless, they all are on track to play Saturday against the Houston Texans in that big divisional matchup in Kansas City. Meanwhile, Tyler Higbee, despite being taken to the hospital on Monday night with a lung injury, a chest injury, the Rams say he is expected to play this week against the Eagles on Sunday. He was spitting up blood. They say he's better. He's going to be okay. And that's good news for the Rams because Matthew Stafford has relied on him. And two other notes to point out, Laura. Number one, the Detroit Lions listed David Montgomery as a full participant in practice today. And the second note that just came in, very interesting. The Baltimore Ravens claimed former Texans wide receiver Diontae Johnson on waivers today. That means that Diontae Johnson now has another home, another stop. This is a procedural move. He won't be awarded to the franchise until after the Super Bowl. But what the Ravens were doing here is now, if Johnson leaves in free agency, the Ravens have the potential to have that impact their compensatory draft pick formula in 2026. So Johnson will finish the season with the Baltimore Ravens. He won't play, but he will help them this offseason if and when he does sign with another team.
I mean, that's chess, not checkers. We all, Adam, while you were talking, we're like, oh, wait, maybe that has to do with Zay Flowers. And we're like, oh, no, he's not going to be playing until he won't play for them, but it does help him with the offseason. That's fascinating. All right, let's do it, people. Okay, we're going to start with Jim Harbaugh. He's a favorite on the show. He had a season-ending press conference today, and, of course, he had a gem for us. Jim.
Reminds me of my grandpa, Bill Harbaugh, and what he would say. It was kind of went like this, like, give him a cup of coffee, and the person's like, it's too hot. And Bill Harbaugh would say, that doesn't mean cold.
Okay.
Okay, if it's hot and you want it hot, it's better. Yeah, that seems self-explanatory. I was waiting for the big lead up.
No complaining allowed.
No complaining
No
allowed.
complaining allowed.
Who's got it better than us?
We find a way to be positive.
Who's got it better? The team still playing.
How many cups of coffee?
Hey, oh, J-Mac.
How many cups of coffee do you drink a day?
At least 6.
What are you on today?
This is 6. Yeah.
Wow. Are you going to have any
I'm like Jim
more?
Harbaugh. I don't need any coffee. I just.
You have to wake up like that.
Yeah.
I want to finish the day.
Yeah, good.
My personality is in that cup.
Yeah.
Cold, hot, I'll take it all, Bill Harbaugh.
This guy drinks his personality.
Yeah, I swear, come
I
on.
haven't seen you never have personality, but it's
You've
probably
never
because
seen
you
me not
always
have
had
coffee. Yeah,
exactly.
There's a
All right.
correlation.
Finally, Dan Quinn was asked how he felt watching Zane Gonzalez's game-winning field goal hit the upright and go through.
I felt like I was in a Bounty commercial, you know, where the cup spills. And no.
I love it.
Oh, it's on me?
That's
I get
you,
it.
Dan.
I vividly see the commercial that Coach Quinn is referencing. I also had that same feeling when Rodgers had one of those Hail Marys versus the Lions when he broke out with Green Bay and the ball was in the air and we were like, no.
Slow motion.
It's a touchdown.
I like the Mentos commercials. Where, like something would go wrong.
Yeah.
And then they would just, it's okay.
It's the fresh maker.
It's the fresh maker.
Man, Dan, you haven't been eating Mentos lately. That's what stinks in here.
We're all thankful for.
I think you made a comment.
I experienced
think you
that.
made
We're
a
all
comment
thankful
about
for
my
it.
teeth
Yes.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Like not trying to crack
You
them.
don't eat the Mentos.
No, he chews them up, spits them out, leaves them there.
Like my opponents.
Wow.
Better, well, I'm not.
Might have been
right
different.
there, huh?
Yeah, better to be the opponent, maybe not.
Opponents say the same.
The Commanders face the Lions on Saturday. Dan, the Lions have struggled to contain running quarterbacks this season. They rank next to last, allowing more than 6 yards per rush to quarterbacks, and only the Jets and Cowboys allowed more rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels has run for 927 yards this season, including the playoffs. And by the way, that was breaking an NFL rookie record, formerly held by another Washington quarterback, Robert Griffin III, in 2012. Here's Lions coach Dan Campbell on defending mobile quarterbacks.
I know this, running quarterbacks are hard. They're hard to defend. And somebody tells you that we don't handle running quarterbacks very well. Well, tell me the team that does. And I'm not going to name a team because then somebody will come back and say, why did you name that team? You're trying to deal with a guy like this over there. You know, they're not easy to stop, and there's a reason for that. Look, we know we got our hands full, but we're going to have a plan in place. AG's going to have a hell of a plan. And you know what? He may make a run. He may pop a run or two. That's just the nature of the game and the way that some of these guys are able to maneuver, but that doesn't mean that you win the game.
J-Mac, what have you seen on tape from this Lions defense against running quarterbacks?
Dan Campbell is right. It is hard. When you go against a Lamar Jackson and some of these guys, a Jaden Daniels, you come in as a defender, and it's a brand new plan to stop these guys because they bring something different to the table. And the Lions are a team under Aaron Glenn that they love to play man-to-man. And when you're man, you have your eyes on your luggage, as we used to say it. You're covering your guy. So when the quarterback takes off, there's not a guy assigned to the quarterback. So you see right here, Josh Allen against the Lions takes off. The safety, Kirby Joseph, is the first guy to touch him. This is Anthony Richardson. You're going to see it again. Man-to-man across the board. Tight end and running back both go to the right. The two linebackers and the safety, they both flow that way. So now you have two pullers coming around leading for Anthony Richardson. There's nobody there to see the pullers. You have to have eyes. This is Tampa Bay a week ago. Watch the amount of eyes that are on Jaden Daniels when he pulls this ball. They're running an option. Is him and Austin Eckler, two guys for the 5 defenders of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that all have eyes on Jaden Daniels. So as much as possible as a defense, it can't just be one guy assigned to the quarterback, because if Jaden Daniels in space, if you only have one guy out there and there's no edge, he's going to make that guy look silly and make him miss. So for the Lions, a team that loves to blitz, they love to play man-to-man, who do you have that is accounting for Jaden Daniels on every single play?
Yeah. I'm looking at the Commanders' offense going against the Lions' defense, and where I think there's an opportunity is for these running backs for the Commanders. Now, when you watch that same Bills game you pulled up and you saw the success they had both on the ground, but more specifically Ty Johnson out of the backfield in the receiving game, I feel like that's something that you got to try to exploit, because what you're going to do is you're going to use pre-snap shifts and motions to have these matchup problems for the running backs and the linebackers. In this one, you're going to have that same man-to-man, and all the defenders are on the same level. They run a pick play for Ty Johnson down the sideline. They even got to that through the shifts and motions to make sure they're in the position they need. Austin Eckler, I think, could be someone to take a look at when you're looking at it receiving out of the backfield. And for that run game, Robinson, those guys have to get going because they didn't give us much last week in the wild card round.
I mean, Pony, the two-back set. I mean, this team runs it. Washington offensively, they run it more than anybody in the NFL. I would say that they have the most success with it out of anybody in the NFL. I'm in the same thought process. I mean, look at it. They've run 90 plays essentially this year with Pony. Pony is having two tailbacks on the field, two halfbacks on the field. So you're talking about Brian Robinson and an Austin Eckler at the same time. Almost 700 yards of their offense came this year off that. 7.7 yards per play. So it's not just one of those guys. I think putting both of them on the field, again, a little bit like Buffalo, because if you're Detroit, now Anzalone being back, Anzalone didn't play in that Buffalo game, right? And so there is him being there is a big deal. But if you're thinking about like the combo of Jaden's legs, both broken and designed plays, with having to cover those two backs with backers, they present a legit threat to a defense that wants to your guys' point, like play man coverage. Yeah. It's advantage Washington in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions blitz at the second highest rate in the NFL this season. Jaden Daniels
kills the blitz.
Second in total QBR versus the blitz this season. So not a great matchup for the Lions, but they've been so good, they'll adjust, they'll figure it out. That game is going to be great, as are all of them, right? We're counting down to the divisional round, and this matchup as well between the Bills and Ravens. New on NFL Live, we're going to check in.
Y'all, have you ever thought about what had happened if Deion "Primetime" Sanders swapped his Buffalo's hat for a Dallas Cowboys star? Well, grab a seat, because things are heating up in Big D. After a tough 7-10 season, Jerry Jones showed Mike McCarthy the door, leaving Cowboys fans wondering who's going to steer this ship. Now here comes Prime with his larger-than-life personality, catching the eye of none other than Jerry himself. Word's out that they had a lil chat on Monday. No official interviews yet, but y'all know Jerry, he doesn't let the grass grow under his boots. Now some folks might ask, why would Deion leave Colorado after just 2 seasons? Prime's got love for Boulder, no doubt about it, but when Jerry Jones calls, you listen. Sanders told ESPN that talking with Jerry was delightful and intriguing. Y'all, that's Texan code for I'm thinking about it. Deion's record speaks for itself, 13-12 at Colorado and 27-6 at Jackson State. He's got a knack for turning things around, and if there's one team that could use a shakeup, it's the Cowboys. But here's where it gets real spicy. NFL. Teams have been sniffing around Deion since last year, but this is the first time the Cowboys and Prime have been tied together with some serious interest. Sure, there's been talk of Vegas, but Jerry's got that Lone Star charm, and we all know Deion's got Texas roots. Could this be the perfect match to bring back that Super Bowl glory? Think about it, y'all. The Cowboys need a leader who can inspire and shake things up, and Deion's got the charisma, football smarts, and swagger to do it. But here's the million-dollar question. Do you reckon Jerry's ready to hand the reins to Prime? And more importantly, are we ready for the electrifying show that Deion Sanders would bring to the NFL's most storied franchise? Let us know what y'all think.